and local partnership, the case of family empowerment media. For those who don't know, family empowerment media is an evidence-driven nonprofit that enables informed contraceptive decisions through clear, engaging, and accurate communication. As of December last year, they had recorded 25,000 new contraceptive users. They also recorded 20 million radio listeners and also 60 times cost effectiveness. Please give them a round of applause. And so this session will explore a new focus for FEM and answers how we can shift behavior at scale, not just to inform people, but truly change their minds and action, and how we can know that this is working. Also, the role of SBC in driving real-world impact, and how one organization, which is Family Empowerment Media, is applying SBC principles through radio to reduce maternal mortality in Nigeria. We will examine how persuasive campaigns are designed, how rigorous evaluation is integrated into their model, and how partnership with local organizations is crucial to doing this work effectively. The lessons extend indeed beyond family planning and beyond radio. Our speaker today is Scheffler. Ken is the co-founder and managing director of Family Empowerment Media, the non-profit that is dedicated to enabling informed family decisions. Previously, Ken was a director at Innovations for Poverty Action, where he supported evidence-based programming across education, peace building, and humanitarian sectors. In addition, he served as a senior project manager at Dalberg in Kenya, and as a program manager, as you said. Can we please give him a round of applause? His work blends rigorous evidence with practical execution, and he has led initiatives across more than a dozen countries. Kenneth holds an MBA and a Master in International Affairs from Columbia Business Schools. His session will obviously include a Q&A after the talk, so please try to send in your questions through the live interactive feature on Swapcard and submit that. So just open the session app and click the speech bubble. Please, as you've heard these amazing things about Ken and all he has done in Africa, join me to give a standing ovation to Kenneth Scheffler.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. I'd like to say, save the standing ovation until the end normally, so as not to raise expectations, but that's very nice, Maria. Thank you. It's great to be here. All right, we could get the slides ready. So this is going to be somewhat interactive. I have a few polls for you to take. So to get ready for that, use the QR code here or type the URL into the browser. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, all right. Great, there'll be another opportunity to set that up. So let me begin. I came far from here. I grew up in Larchmont, New York, 5,000 miles away. And when I tell people that I work on family planning in West Africa, people from my hometown most often respond, why? It's quite a distance. And typically, as someone in the effective altruism community, I would respond with like a really highly analytical answer. I may refer to this framework here: importance, neglectedness, and tractability. And I do think that working on family planning in West Africa scores very highly on all three criteria. And that's a major reason why I do work in the area. But first, before I talk more about the analytical reasons for why I do the work I do, I want to just give you a bit of my personal journey. So back in high school, I actually wanted to be a professional soccer player. And now I'm here. So it didn't work out. And there's one simple reason why it didn't work out, and that is that I wasn't a terrific soccer player. People don't seem very surprised by that. It's a little bit insulting, but I get it. The second reason why I entered the career field that I did is that I grew up at a time, like I went to university before there was an effective altruist community at all, the early 2000s. But I was a philosophy major, and at that time in university, I read Peter Singer's book. So Peter Singer talks about this thought experiment where you're going to work and you have on your favorite pair of shoes, which you really like. But on the path to work, you spot a baby drowning in a shallow pond. So you could go in and save the baby's life, but to do so, you'd have to ruin your shoes. So it's a difficult question here, and we get to our first poll question, which people are already answering. Which would you save, your fancy shoes, your fancy clothes, or the drowning child? So register your answer here. All right, the drowning child is winning in a landslide. So that is also how I would choose. I would choose to save the drowning child. What Peter Singer does in his book is make the point that besides this drowning child, there are lots of other important challenges in the world, and they can be addressed through relatively minimal effort, relatively minimal sacrifice to us. So besides the drowning child, there's hundreds of other challenges out there. And for me, that was very inspiring. Like, I didn't want to feel like I was letting the child drown. I wanted to use my time and energy to doing something that addressed the biggest challenges in the world. So that's been a motivation for me. And I think that's quite a standard origin story for someone who's part of the effective altruist community. I think a lot of what we don't talk about, though, is what happens next beyond the motivation. And for me, I think it's important to recognize that positioning yourself to do the most good you can with your career is really hard. It's hard to get the right job. It's hard to get the right skills. And it's also hard to know if what you're working on is the right thing, if it is the most impactful. For example, right now I'm working at Family Empowerment Media, and I'll talk much more about that in just a bit. But I do feel, very happy with the impact that I'm having. I feel fulfilled career-wise. But it wasn't always like this. This chart here would suggest just a smooth progression from impact fulfillment, career skills, and career capital. And overall, I do feel like my career has fortunately basically moved like that way directionally, but it hasn't always been so smooth. So my first job was with a member of the US Congress. And I was excited to join. It sounded very glamorous. A lot of what I did, though, was driving the congresswoman from event to event. And often she would turn to me, she was in the passenger seat, and she would say, "Ken, do you know where you're going?" And I would pause and nod, yeah, I do. But really, I didn't. I was lost like all the time. It was really bad. We were late for events. So it was a rough beginning. Just one example of some challenges I faced. So as Maria was saying at the start, I've I had some great jobs and quite happy with my career, but I've done nonprofit work, I've done government work, I've done some consulting. But what I'd say is that I think for me, like a lot of other people within effective altruism or global health or really anything, it's a very unpredictable career with a lot of ups and downs. And hopefully you end up in the top right corner. I'd also say that there's always been a lot of uncertainty throughout my career. Even now, where I'll be, 10 years into the future isn't clear. And I think like we're in a changing landscape in global health. It's always kind of a changing landscape. So no matter kind of how far you go in your career, there's always kind of this high level of uncertainty that's unavoidable. I think not knowing for sure if you're on the right track is normal. And so I wanted to acknowledge that. All right, so that's a bit about me, a bit about my career. Now let me talk to you about the main topic, social and behavior change, and the work that my organization, Family Empowerment Media, is doing. So Family Empowerment Media was initially conceived back in 2020 through the Charity Entrepreneurship Program. There was an earlier session about charity entrepreneurship, the Ambitious Impact session, Leone. So I won't go too far into that. I did the program. Through this incubation program, I got access to a co-founder, to training, some seed capital, and probably most importantly, I got the idea for what became Family Empowerment Media. So what we do at Family Empowerment Media is we try to reduce unintended pregnancies. To do that, we try to change knowledge, beliefs, and norms. And to do that, the main thing we do is create, produce, and broadcast radio ads and radio shows about family planning. Now, I have to say that before going to the Charity Entrepreneurship Program, I was not a family planning person. I had worked on malnutrition, and I had worked on a bit on AIDS. And to me, these were very high priority causes. Family planning just didn't seem to be as acute an issue. I learned then that 111 million pregnancies per year are unintended. That seemed quite unfortunate, but still I questioned, like, is this the highest priority area to work in? Then I learned that in Nigeria, there's a 1 in 19 lifetime risk of a woman dying due to childbirth-related complications. And that really caught my attention. In addition, I learned about all the educational and economic benefits of being able to control your reproductive health. And putting this all together with the help of some spreadsheets and talking to people, it became clear to me that family planning was a great way to use my time, and something that in global health, I think, deserves more focus than it gets. So the question is, I should mention that in Nigeria, like in a lot of countries, there's a lot of unintended pregnancies, but there's also access to contraception. It's available at clinics for low cost. Now, we do need more access. That is an issue. But the question is, where there is access, why isn't it used more? Why are there so many unintended pregnancies? And to answer that question, we've spoken to thousands of people within Nigeria. And we hear many things, but 3 key points that come up are contraception will harm my body. People will judge me. My husband wouldn't allow it. So these issues get at the complexity of the decision to have another human being. You choose to have a child, if you choose, or you may not even choose, it could be accidental. There's just so much going involved. There's social factors, there's psychological factors, there's economic factors. And so to address this, you need a campaign that's grounded in research about what really drives human behavior. These types of campaigns are social and behavior change campaigns. They're interventions that influence the widespread drivers of human behavior. They do so by identifying what are the drivers, what are the reasons why people aren't acting in a way that could promote their health, and producing content that's targeted to influence them to healthier decisions. There's a lot of evidence of the effectiveness of SBC campaigns throughout the world. For example, in WASH, there's been successful efforts to increase hand washing. We see successful efforts for vaccine uptake. Here in Nigeria, are you people familiar with MTV Sugar? So this helped to increase use of condoms and use of testing for HIV. There's also some preliminary evidence on intimate partner violence. And so there's another organization, another charity that was incubated recently by Charity Entrepreneurship called NOVA. And they're doing radio programs in Rwanda around intimate partner violence. And we've been engaging with them. I also think, if you're thinking about how you might do your own SVC campaign, we think that there's high potential in the area of countering female genital mutilation in certain regions. So that's something that there is one organization working there, but we think that there's more opportunity to work on this area, and we'd be happy to talk to others interested in that. So social and behavior change, I've given a bit of like what it is at a high level, a bit of the impact it's had. Let me say how it is transmitted. And there are kind of three high level ways. One is mass media. That's what we mostly do. So this is TV, radio, billboards, print. And this is a great way to reach people at scale. There's also digital and mobile. We actually are doing this a bit as well. So we have like a WhatsApp interaction. Other organizations use apps or SMS messaging. And then community and interpersonal. So this is quite common in Nigeria, where you have community health workers, for example, or religious leaders will talk about a certain health topic. So all of these mechanisms of transmitting campaigns can be effective. It can be helpful to do them combined. They serve different purposes. For us, we really believe that radio is an extremely powerful medium. And before I give you all the reasons for that, just to understand more about the group here, we'll take our second poll of the day. How often do you listen to the radio? Are people able to access it, the poll? So someone went for the what's radio response, and I don't have a slide on that. But yeah, maybe later we could go online and I'll show you pictures. Doing well, actually. Monthly, okay. I'm glad no one's listening right now. That would have been upset. Oh, no. Okay. I get it. It's fun to listen to. All right. Still more, but I'll stop at 30. We'll continue with the rest of the presentation. It's very fun to watch. Oh no, we're stuck at 26. I'm gonna move on. All right. So this room is a little bit unrepresentative. There was a study back in 2019 in 8 sub-Saharan African countries. And it found that 62% of people listen every day. In addition to listening every day, when we talk to people, we find that there's high trust. What people hear, people have their favorite hosts. And radio can be quite intimate, like a relationship created between the person talking and the audience. Audience members often are alone. They're working, they're in the kitchen, they're commuting. So it hits you kind of throughout your day and becomes habitual. One example of this, there was a campaign in Burkina Faso, similar to ours, Development Media International. And one family, there was this really positive role model in the story. She chose to use family planning, but ultimately had a daughter. She named the daughter after the character that influenced her to use contraception. So that shows the power that radio can have, and that a well done radio programming can have. Okay, so a lot of people listen to radio. Another thing is that radio is relatively inexpensive. So to show you a bit of our budget information here, in one region with $63,000 of airtime, we were able to reach 7 million people for 7 months. That comes out to less than 1 US cent per month. So often, like even in this conference, people are have been suggesting, well, why don't you do print? Like, why don't you go door to door? And those are good things to do. And on a person by person basis, they can be more impactful. But radio just allows so much scale relatively inexpensively. So that's kind of sets it apart. All right, so there's some good reasons for radio, but what does the evidence say? So there's some good evidence on radio. You can see these are family planning studies, and you can see the percentage point increase in contraception as a result of these campaigns was 6% or higher. And the Burkina Faso one is this Development Media International, and that was actually a randomized controlled trial, so higher quality evidence there. All right, so what I've done so far, I talked a bit about myself and why I'm not on Real Madrid. I've talked about our organization, Social and Behaviour Change, why family planning is important, why we like radio. Now I want to just give you an overview of what we do, what we've done at FEM, Family Empowerment Media, with some lessons. So first of all, we have sort of a 4-stage process: selection, research, creative and production, and airing, and monitoring and evaluation. So I'll go through each one by one. All right, so with selection, we seek to be in areas where, first of all, this is like selecting where we work. And we seek to be, we do this at like a country level and a state level. So we initially, Nigeria is the country we chose to launch in. First state we launched in was Kano. We're about to be entering 10 to 15 more states. So we look at potential for impact, we look at cost, we look at implementation feasibility. In terms of potential for impact, one thing that has been like really important for us in the last year, the kind of changing landscape, is supply side. So social and behavior change campaigns often have elements they can't control. In our case, we don't control the availability of contraception. So there are some states in Nigeria where maybe we could have really high potential for impact because there's a lot of unmet need for contraception, or there's high maternal mortality rate. But if there are stockouts, then behavior change and SBC campaign could be counterproductive. So this is something we've studied a lot. An implementation feasibility, part of that is having strong partners. We have a couple of our partners here today. So first is IDEF Pro Africa, and IDEF Pro Africa is the first organization we dealt with. We spoke to them, I think, within 2 months of founding FEM. The first 6 months, we started FEM in 2020 during COVID. For the first 6 months, we couldn't enter Nigeria. So that was a problem. However, because of our partnership with IDEV Pro Africa, by the time I entered Nigeria, I spoke to government people and they were already quite familiar with our organization. We had already had a stakeholder workshop, and this was all because of the really important work that our partner IDEV Pro Africa has done. So I want to thank Dr. Mansour Tukar, who has been the leader of IDEV Pro Africa. Okay, thanks. More broadly, I mean, this isn't a novel idea, but it is worth considering. There's always this choice for global organizations, whether to go it alone or work with in-country organizations. There's, pros and cons of both. For us, it's worked out really well. At the global level, we bring some analytical tools, promising practices, and access to funders and to researchers. And then in-country organizations have brought an understanding of the context, trust to the community, and long-standing relationships. Okay, so I'm gonna go on to second phase, which is research. We do a combination of quantitative research and qualitative research to understand why people are making the choices that they are. And I think, you can't always get this. You generally can't get this from a literature review. A lot of it helps, but papers will be dated. You need to be on the ground talking to people. So we've done more than 3,000 interviews of Nigerian men and women, and found some interesting things. So one is just the role of religion. This is from the quant research. We, asked the same question to users and non-users of family planning. And we found that those who weren't using were almost 3 times more likely to say their religion forbids family planning. So there's a takeaway there that to the extent we can bring on religious leaders who will be supportive of family planning, we should. And some of our most impactful programming in northern Nigeria has been with imams talking about how Islam does not forbid, childbirth spacing. So a lot of insights come from the quantitative side, but also a lot come from the qualitative side of things. One thing we heard is my husband thinks if I use contraceptives, people will think I don't like giving birth or I'm scared of poverty. This theme of poverty and its relationship to family planning was one I was not aware of. But there is this association where if you use contraception, it's because you can't afford to have a larger family. And so what we do, one of the things we do in our program is try to associate family planning with having more resources, but also having middle-class families choosing this option. So not making it, having a lot of stories about low-income people who are choosing this, which might be counterproductive. I just want to state that this picture is not the nice picture, but it's not of the person who said that, to be fair. But we did get her permission to use the picture. Okay, so those are some insights from the qualitative and quantitative research. So moving on to production. Here we work with all local writers and local actors and local production. We have Edie Nasiru here, who has been helping us with that, and also Chidivem as well, one of our partners. So thank you both. For the local creative production, there is always a tension between sort of the technical side and the writing side. And this is one we are still hashing out with Edie. But our research helps to shape what drivers and enablers we include in each of our programs and shows. I should state that we have both fiction and nonfiction programs as well as ads, and we have dramas and monologues. So over the course of a 2-year campaign that's coming up, we'll be producing 300 shows and 300 ads in Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo. In addition to the drivers and the barriers of the use of contraception, we use behavioral levers. So these are kind of tools to compel people to shift attitudes. And there are a few of them. So one is just knowledge. This is the most straightforward. There's a lot of misconceptions about side effects. There are also kind of truths, but partial truths. So we try to give a larger picture of the range of methods that are available. Another lever is norms. So we're social animals, and sort of we've evolved to do what we see others do. So we try to portray contraception as not something scary, but something that's done by people like you. Influence. So in addition to contraception and family planning being something that people like you do, it's also something that aspirational people do. So we have sort of positive role models, people you can look up to who are choosing to use contraception. And then last is agency. So this is about self-efficacy, like the confidence you have in yourself, make decisions to do something you maybe don't feel comfortable with. That's also an important one that we feature. We don't feature these like all the time in every program. And one thing with social and behavior change, especially on the fiction side, is that you don't want to sound like you're preaching to people. You want things to be entertaining, but the message comes through kind of more subtly. So let me just show you one of my favorite dramas called The Clinic Visit. It's about two young women, and it starts out where they're discussing kind of the challenges they're facing at work, challenges they have at home. They don't have enough time. Things are chaotic, like raising their children. So they decide to go to a health clinic to learn more about contraception. When they do so, they notice a neighbor. And this is like the neighborhood busybody. And so then they're like, oh, what's she gonna say about this? Everyone's going to know that we're here, and they're concerned. So they talk about it, but they decide to stay. They speak to a nurse individually. And the nurse tells them about the methods that are available and the side effects. From that, they decide to begin using contraception, and they leave happily. So, simple story. I went over 4 behavioral levers. Sounds like I was saying lover, but maybe that's just me. Lever. So I went over 4, and now I want to ask you, as another quiz, which of the levers does this show address? Okay. We got up to 26 responses last time. Let's see if we can beat that. 25. Knowledge in the lead. 28. All right. 30. Cool. So it was a trick question. It's actually all of them. Sorry about that. So knowledge, the nurse conveys this information about the contraception, the side effects of people, that appeals to people's like intellectual, rational side. Norms, so you see these 2 women who you can identify with making this decision. And it's, they're normal. It's a common decision. Influence, so you have the nurse who's like an aspirational figure. I think that was a little bit hidden, but yeah, there's some influence involved. And then last, agency. I think agency is pretty heavy in that one, where there's multiple times when they can make a different decision. They could choose not to go to the clinic. They could choose to leave because the neighbor is there, but they go forward anyway. So this shows not just that they're deciding to use contraception, but like more broadly that they're kind of in control and independent. All right, so those are some levers that we use in, yeah. Is that 10 minutes for the presentation or 10 minutes for the whole thing? Oh gosh, all right. We're almost done. Last stage is evaluation. So a couple of important things here. Stage appropriate rigor. So like early on, we have programs, we just try to get quick, rapid, low cost feedback on our programs, what people think of them. And then evaluation design. So that actually is quite rigorous and in depth. Are people, who here is familiar with the randomized control trial? Raise your hand. I see people I know are familiar who are not raising their hands. Okay. Randomized control trial. Are you familiar? Yeah. Okay. Well, it's always the best way to know if an intervention is working is use a randomized control trial. Here, you can see like over time that an intervention could look like it's achieving its outcomes, but then maybe something else is happening. So if you have another control group, you can look at, compared to the treatment group, you can see if your intervention is actually having a positive impact. In this case, it's not. You can see the control groups are beating the treatment groups. On the other hand, here you can see treatment is above control, so that's positive. That's a good outcome. Now, traditionally, this has been really hard to randomize, to create control groups in mass media. And that is because we're working with these large antennas that reach everyone. So everyone gets the intervention. There are no control groups. What we at FEM have done, along with our partners, is to create smaller antennas. So lots of smaller antennas. We put them up at health clinics, and these create control groups because they transmit different content from us. So this is a 2-year randomized control trial, 10 to 15 states throughout Nigeria, where we'll have a before and after with about 8,000 women to see those who hear our content and those who don't, what is the difference? So we're quite excited to get really rigorous results through that evaluation. All right, so that's our process. Yeah, you can see here the treatment and control areas. That's our 4-stage process. I'm just closing kind of to recap. In the personal journey, when trying to do good, career uncertainty is normal. Social and behavior change campaigns can be highly impactful. Radio-based advocacy campaigns can be particularly cost-effective. Partnerships between global organizations and in-country organizations can leverage the best of both. And effective SBC campaigns are grounded in research and take impact measurements seriously. Finally, looking back on this book by Peter Singer, one thing that had occurred to me is that this was almost like its own social and behavior change campaign. So I learned there was information, there were facts in the book. There was this vivid story about the drowning child. And then there's the influence of this well-known and respected philosopher, Peter Singer. I didn't know at the time that I was experiencing social and behavior change campaigns, but in a lot of ways I did. It stuck with me. And that's the power of SBC campaigns. You may not know that you're experiencing it, but it can be extremely powerful for people's lives and can be a force for improving health outcomes. Thank you.
So thank you, Ken, for this very insightful talk. We have less than 5 minutes to go to your Q&A session, and more like a fire brigade. Okay. All right. So you shared how FEM uses radio for SBC and shared your budget was around $5,000. What should smaller organizations consider when choosing a communication channel for skill?
Really interesting question. So to clarify, the 63,000 was just for the airtime costs. So there's a lot of other costs involved. What should smaller organizations consider? I hate to I'll be a weasel here and say like that is maybe too broad a question for me to answer, but I'd be happy to like discuss the personal, to discuss this one-on-one. What I would say is like the community things maybe could be cheaper, or maybe you could be on the air just less often. Yeah, so there's various ways that you can go with it.
So another question, have you seen any surprising behavioral changes, maybe positive or negative, from listeners that weren't anticipated in initial design?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that was very positive from our work in the North is that the Council of the Lamas came to us because so many their congregants were coming to them, talking to them about our programs and whether it was true that, you know, Islam didn't forbid childbirth spacing. So that was like a piece of feedback that we weren't expecting. It's not like quantitative, but that was really, really positive for us.
Well, someone's also asking, is FEM just concerned about contraception issues, or are there other ways to empower families?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now, our focus is on family planning. I mentioned female genital mutilation. That might be something that others work in, but we look at where we can be cost effective, and we think there are several countries. Nigeria is one country. We're entering Niger this year. We think there are several other countries where we can be cost effective using family planning. So our plans for now are to stay in that area.
So this question is kind of similar to the first question. There is great work. Can you think of any other areas outside of family planning that you would say could benefit a lot from adopting an SBC intervention like FEM, but yet have actors in that area?
Yeah. It's hard to think of areas where there are no actors. You know, traditionally there's a lot of health type interventions. So I mentioned like hand washing being like a classic case. Yeah, I think female genital mutilation could be an area. Intimate partner violence is new. I guess to be in an area where, you know, we've also thought about like antenatal care and perinatal care. There's being aware of like snake bites, actually, because that could be quite deadly in certain places, and road safety is another one.
So this is a question that I think is very personal to me, because of course, like you're in Africa, money exchanges hands. So how do you as FEM, you know, identify and maintain trust with local partners, and what has been some make or break factors in that area?
Yeah, I mean, part of trust is like knowing the people there, but in addition to that, and especially early on, you need to have financial controls. You need to maintain oversight, so like do proper accounting. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different ways, like with your partners, with contractors, where things might not be delivered the way you want. And that's why, like, when you do find strong partners that you can trust, like I think our three main partners are in that, then you can, you know, become a bit more hands off, but still, you know, you owe it to our funders to do like proper due diligence. So it's a balance, but yeah, when there are some, as you get to know a certain vendor or partner over time, and you have that trust, then it could be less extensive.
So 2 more questions. One which I believe, as we are more enlightened, a lot of women will want to ask this question. So does FEM content target men as well as women? Why and why not? Because everybody, like, why is it only women? Why is it our responsibility? What about the men?
Yeah.
So that's the question.
Yeah, absolutely. We target men. It's like 50% of our content is targeted towards men. One interesting thing, there's a recent study showing that men are more likely to respond to nonfiction content and women more likely for fiction content. So we have about an equal mix of both.
All right. So someone says, that's the last question we're taking. Does FEM just educate on family planning, or do they also provide contraceptive or hospital appointments for the woman? So do you just do the programming, or you go a step further to provide the contraceptives, and then another step further to book hospital appointments?
Yeah. So we provide information through the radio. We don't book appointments, but we are allowing for more personalized interaction. So we have a partnership with Maria Stopes, where people can call in, and we provide the number for Maria Stopes. People can call in and get information about where to go for a clinic. And then in other parts of the country, so that's in the northern parts, like Hausa-speaking regions, and then in southern parts of the country, we're starting a WhatsApp program, so people can write to us. And we're actually seeking an employee for that, Yoruba speaking, who could kind of oversee the support center to provide a kind of personalized information. Yeah. But we don't currently do any supply work, and that's why it's so important to be in locations where the supply is sufficient.
So you said Yoruba speaking.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to repeat, if you are Yoruba speaking, there's a job opportunity to work with them to manage as a community manager for their WhatsApp. We get that. Just give him a round of applause. So thank you so much.
Thank you for that.
So that's all we have for this session. And just a reminder, he has his office hours in Hall 2. So if you want to ask him more questions, ask him more about what he's doing with Family Empowerment Media, please, I hope to see you at the office hours. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.